Right. So this is our lab 3, the third lab. Remember, I spoke about two things today. One is the intellectual property side, which is the ownership of ideas. And number two is the social media is bringing in issues when it comes to privacy. So two things. So in this one, we are actually looking at the privacy side, and we are trying to understand existing privacy laws, Sri Lankan versus outside Sri Lanka, global, and also try to understand each social media platform, how they use the law or the legal side of the privacy, right? So coming down, so the idea here is to look at privacy policies in social media platforms. It's pretty complex, but if you look at the fundamentals, every social media platforms has a similar sort of area when it comes to privacy laws. So the objective of this is to analyze and evaluate privacy policy of major social media platforms, understand Sri Lankan and international data protection regulations, assess legal compliance of social media platforms with privacy laws, and the last one is identify privacy risk and protection mechanisms in social media. Because like I said, privacy is a big deal. As of last week, we noticed there was a major security breach around the world exposing pretty much all the social media, including Gmail. The accounts are exposed. So that's a big problem. And if you are using social media to authenticate your applications, now that's what we discuss under the technicalities here, right? Like SSO, single sign-on, for example. And if your system gets hacked because of the social media authentication you are using, you are basically exposing your data, actually your client's data and your client system, which is going to be a major issue, right? Legally as well. So these are the three things you need to be looking at before you start the lab: social media platforms and their business model. Look at few social mediums, and pretty much everyone try to make money out of advertising, isn't it? And then concept of personal data and privacy. What is personal data? What is privacy? And then there are certain terminologies. There are some jargon when it comes to legalities under the privacy areas. So there are a couple of different parts. Part one is understanding privacy policy framework. So you need to do a research on legal frameworks, starting off with the Sri Lankan context. So go to Google, do a search on Sri Lanka Personal Data Protection Act. We have a very powerful Data Protection Act. Okay, it's pretty comprehensive. And go through the document, try to understand what is there. Now, these are the areas you can these are the areas where you can use to understand that. Number one, when was it enacted? When was it launched and enacted? It became law in Sri Lanka. What constitutes personal data under the Sri Lankan law? What do you mean by personal data? Is it the name? Is it the phone number? Is it the health information? What is it? There are definitions of that. So you need to go through that. And what are the rights of data subject? Data subject is us. Our data is there. So we are, let's say me, I'm a data subject. My data is used by a company. So what are the rights I have? Now, for example, I can ask the company and say, what are you storing about me? Let's say a supermarket, right? What are you storing about me? And if I want, can I ask them to delete that? Or if I want, can I get a copy of that? Right? Or can I ask them to whom they have shared their data with? So do I have the right? That's called the rights, right? And what obligations do data controllers have? Data controllers are the people who own, or actually I can't use the word own, basically handle the data. Like I said, supermarket. Maybe the supermarket themselves do not control the data. They may have given it to somebody else, some other third party, to process it and come back to them with reports and things like that. That's on the Sri Lankan context. Next is international context. So especially the EU, European Union has a very powerful data protection regulation, a GDPR. You may have seen when you go to a European website, it pops up and say, do you agree to the GDPR? Then with a button, yes, no, right? So what happens when I press no button? What happens when I press yes button? Yeah. So those are the things you need to research. If I say no, can I still access the website or I cannot access the website? Right. Then there's another one in the US, another famous one, California Consumer Privacy Act or CCPA. Check that out as well. And you can also look at some other areas also, what is happening in, let's say, France or Australia or other European countries, maybe UK separately, things like that. So that's the researching part, step one. Step two, create a comparison framework. Now, once you go through this, you will understand they look the same, but there may be few changes, like what happens when it is breached. What are the, let's say, punishments? So they differ from one to the other. So try to compare that. Yeah, all these three. So there is a area you can use. Now these are the help you can use. Tips, consent requirements. Consent means like when they ask the person, do you agree for things like this? So what are they asking, right? And then, like we saw previously, data subject right and data controller right. And then what about the notification if something goes wrong? Now, again, in Sri Lanka, you notice in the past few months, there were a couple of banks lost their data, right? Did they inform their customers? Some of them did, some of them did not, right? And what are the penalties, the punishments? If something goes wrong, what happens? Now, who's giving the punishment? Is it the government? Is it the legal framework? Is it the court? Who's giving these punishments? So that's part one. Part two is social media platform analysis. So we are trying to understand the policies of different platforms. Now, I have given you a list of platforms. Facebook, well, Meta is the organization. Under that, we have Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, and things like that. Twitter, which is called X, is another one. TikTok is another Chinese product. LinkedIn from Microsoft, and then YouTube from Google. So there are 6 platforms. Select 2, right? Not all. So select 2 of these 6, and then go through their privacy policy page. Right? Now, let's say if you pick up Facebook, try to locate the privacy policy of Facebook. And then also, there will be something on data protection privacy policy document. Now, you may have already seen when you go to your Facebook profile, it allows you to download your personal data, right? So go through that. And then save that URL because you will need that later. Okay, and also figure out when have they updated the policy. Now, time to time, you may have received emails saying we changed our policy for something or the other, right? So when did they update it last? Is it this year, last year, 5 years ago? When is it, right? So those are the areas you need to record. Step 4, detailed policy analysis. Now, if you go through some of these policies, you may have seen they are broken into various areas, right? So here we have 4 areas: data collection practices, data usage, user rights and controls, legal compliance, right? So compare the policies under these 4 pillars. When you say data collection practices, what type of personal data are collected? How is it collected? Right? Now, do they disclose what they are collecting? All these are important. So take each line and then write a small paragraph of the 2 companies or 2 social platforms you picked up from this list up there. Part 3 is the compliance, right? Now, remember under part 1 here, you compared 3, right? So coming to part 3, what's that? Okay, here, you try to understand the gaps, right? Now, Again, it is broken down into two: Sri Lankan requirement and international requirement. Does the platform comply with Sri Lanka data protection principles? Now, here you analyzed the products, right? The social media platform. What do you think about their personal or data protection principle with the Sri Lankan data protection principles? Are they compatible? Are they not compatible? You know, things like that. Are there any specific provision for Sri Lankan users? If you take Facebook, do they specifically mention Sri Lankan users or maybe South Asian users, right? And if yes, you can write about it. If no, you can say there is nothing like that. And then the gap, what gap exists in the compliance? So are there any gaps now? Say it might be Sri Lankan protection principle has some gaps, or the, let's say, Facebook has some gaps. So we have to identify where we are missing the gaps. And then the international one. How does the platform address GDPR requirements? Are there adequate user controls and transparency? Does the policy meet international best practices? Now, you may need to also look at best practices. So Europe or US or Sri Lanka, there may be some best practices, right? Common among many companies, many platforms. So what are those? And then the whole sort of exercise is to write a report. Yeah. So it's about 1,005 to 2,000 words. It's not a huge one, right? It's a couple of pages. Now, one A4 sheet is about 400 words. So we are talking about 5 pages here, right? Around, plus the references. So these are the sections. So you have 5 sections in the report. Section 1, executive summary. Section 2, legal framework analysis. Section 3, platform privacy policy analysis. And Section 4, compliance assessment. So coming from these areas, yeah, 4 parts. 4 parts have 4 sections in the report. So it's a report. It's a research and then it's a report. So the objective here is to look at basically the understanding of how the laws are working locally and also internationally. This is the marking guide. You can go through this. I'll share this document. So marking guide is there. And also, what else? Report requirement. You need to submit it as a PDF, and this is the file name. Okay. So here's the unit code. Lab, actually it's lab 3. And then your student ID. All right. I'm not very particular about this IEEE citation style. Any style is fine as long as there is a style. All right. I hope you know how to use the referencing tool from MS Word. So use those tools. Generate the bibliography and the references automatically. Do not copy paste here and there. I hope you know how to do that. Right. Now you have the freedom to use any government website or internet website, no problem. Use any site you want. But if you are using any of these other external sites, make sure you have a reference to that. Okay. Make sure you have a reference, link, URL, up-to-date link to those. Okay, so that's on the lab 3. Any questions?